be back in a new EMA session. Sorry for the delay. We got some technical difficulties. We have to figure it out. But yeah, now we got this solved. I'm gladly having here today with us Giulio. That is going to have a very nice conversation. So Giulio, please take some time and introduce yourself, and yeah, tell our community about yourself and the amazing thing that you're doing every day.
Awesome. Hi guys. Hi Andrea. Hi community. My name is Giulio. I work at the Caduceus Foundation on the Caduceus protocol. I'm the head of DApp development, and I oversee the ecosystem for Caduceus, which is a layer 1 EVM compatible blockchain. We're fast, we're very cheap, very low gas, and we are looking at building the ecosystem for the metaverse. We're looking at an ecosystem for NFTs, GameFi, and trying to bring a lot of players into one space where they're an ecosystem for all of these ecosystems can thrive together, work together, and create the metaverse that we, are trying to all define at the same time. I've been working in blockchain for maybe 6 years now at various companies. And yes, I'm excited to talk with Andre about AI. There's a lot of hype and a lot of fun, and they're building a lot of great projects and protocols. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much for joining us today in our discussion. So, dear community, I guess you already know me. I'm Andre, I'm the CEO of Open Fabric, and as you may already know, or if you're not, we are basically building like a new layer 1, which is specially designed to scale up artificial intelligence. So in a way, we're putting together two very powerful technology like blockchain and AI to create a new synergy that let people to have easily access to artificial intelligence, because in the long run, we want to democratize access to AI application. Yeah, so let's get going in our discussion. So our discussion is structured in 2 segments. The first one is where we gather some question from our community, from people interested in our collaboration. So we're going to take this question one by one, and we try to provide some interesting and answer to them. So first question that we got from our people in community. So is how does the partnership between Caduceus Open Fabric contribute to advancing and developing the metaverse and AI technology? So Giulio, you can start with your insight, and I will try to add my own.
Absolutely. Well, for us, I think it's twofold. One, we want Caduceus developers to obviously have access to AI tools and infrastructure, meaning that now with Open Fabric's protocol accessible to Caduceus developers, smart contracts on the Caduceus chain can interact with various different AI algorithms and models and amplify and make a better DApp in their end and improve their services. The other part to this is that we definitely want to, we are not AI professionals. We're blockchains, we're blockchain creators. So we want to work with Open Fabric and also stay close with them to see how they innovate, how they build, and see what we can build with them. And grow from them and build together and help us definitely be ahead of the curve in this AI revolution, specifically because we are in the metaverse game or the GameFi game, which is industries which are ripe for disruption with this technology.
Yeah, thank you very much for your insight. So you're actually right. Using AI, it helps you to stay ahead of the curve. So right now there's a fundamental, I could call it fundamental innovation that happens in the AI field, and this is only because people saw the potential. So I guess the metaverse and game development and creating new universes require a lot of content, and I guess to fill that gap, to create this content, to create like 3D models, to create music, to create images, to create even like stories. AI can be a wonderful tool that can enrich and in also like scale up a lot, like new metaverse and new like digital universes. So I guess you're right. What I could add more to that is that by utilizing the AI, the creator and people creating new universes, new metaverses can take advantage of generative AI, because it's somehow generative AI, like it's a new subfield of AI, to use generative AI to create this amazing content that Metaverse is currently very very hungry for. Yeah, so getting further with the second question. So it's like this. So can you elaborate on how integrating Caduceus blockchain with Open Fabric AI platform enable the creation, sharing and monetizing of AI service at a large scale? So I guess this is a bit targeted for me. So I try to start with this. Then essentially, by as I previously mentioned, people can leverage the power of generative AI to generate this amazing thing. So we saw like initially, like we saw like example like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and this generative model to create images. But right now we are more and more talking about generating not only like images, like music, even 3D models. We even start thinking about how we can use AI to generate games, to generate like the entire 3D complex 3D model, like part of the game, and how we can combine them. So in a way, utilizing this new advancement, because there's a lot of researchers, a lot of smart people working in developing new type of models that can create this kind of 3D worlds. And I guess this is something very amazing, because Open Fabric it's creating this backbone, this bedrock that enable people to execute and run any AI application. So also they can use like and run these kind of models, and I guess these kind of things, they are very very useful for Metaverse, and especially in our case for Caduceus, which there are some really amazing guys pushing the limit of what Metaverse mean, and how can let people to build together new 3D worlds. So yeah, please also as your
Yeah,
like your yeah.
yeah, I would add to that, because in some sense there's almost there's three layers of deepness of AI integration. One is I use AI to create a 3D world, but I do that once at home and then I put that into my code. The other one is during the game, I need to generate content that I don't know beforehand. So I can't code it beforehand. So mid game, I'm executing code that calls Open Fabric with your SDK, generates the items and embeds it in the game. This is still off chain, right? This is all on game. Then the web blockchain, if it's a blockchain game, then you might be in a scenario where all of a sudden some part of a smart contract or some part of the AI that needs to interact with the smart contract needs to generate assets or images or something for an NFT, anything like that, and then have that inside a smart contract or stored on the blockchain. And that's like the even deeper integration, where all of a sudden you've got AI generated content being stored on the blockchain, being generated on the fly, which is again probably technically very hard, and this is like at the forefront. We're still far away from that, but these are where we can start to push this capability of AI generation with immutable storage and guaranteed execution of the blockchain. Once you have these capabilities with generatable content, which is what AI is doing at the moment, there's a lot you can unlock. but it's a lot of work as well, and you have to be very accurate with what the hell you're generating, because we've seen all the variance of generation that AIs can do.
Yeah, that's a very insightful, idea. I just remember right now. I saw a few days ago some people experimented, like using AI, interacting with AI in game to generate new items. So I guess
Mm,
by combining these two things, like generating, letting people to actually generate things in game, and then get the ownership of that generated item that later on can maybe sell to some other players or do a trade or something like that. I guess this like a amazing use case that showcase in a way like how these two different worlds can go along together and to create new synergies and even more like new business model, because
yeah,
gaming is it's about fun, but at the same time it's an industry. It's about creating revenue for companies and creating new stream of income. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I love that, and you definitely have to send me that company that does that, because generating content in a game has always existed. Community driven games, or player generated content exists. But once you add player generated content with AI, and then you add player generated content that then is sellable to anyone else with blockchain, that's a lot you can do there, a lot of new business models.
Yeah. So moving to the next question. So what potential benefit can user and developer expect from collaboration of Caduceus and Open Fabric in terms of accessibility, innovation, even growth, in both in blockchain and AI space. So maybe you can start and I add my thoughts.
What Say the question again? What can we expect in terms of?
So in essence, what people can expect in terms of what they can gain from our joint collaboration. So
Yeah, like we said, I think the main thing you can expect now is that from a blockchain perspective, you have access to these AI models and solutions inside your smart contract, or at least somewhere in your application. You can access it and use it inside your applications, which should enhance your your service that you provide. That's from Caduceus's perspective.
yeah, so you're right. Definitely, there's a lot of there's a lot of synergy and a lot of things that because in the end it's about community. It's about providing people from our both communities new way, new tools. So essentially, people from Caduceus will have access to AI tools which are provided by Open Fabric. At the same time, people from Open Fabric community who are mostly like people building models and AI developers, who are people knowing how to build these complex things, can make use of 3D technology, so they can combine those two and get advantage of utilizing uh, you know uh, you know metaverse technology, because we can speak about the metaverse technology. It's not more about gaming, it's beyond that, I guess, right? So when
Mm,
when speaking about meta, it's not only about gaming and having fun. It's more about creating new synergy, new interaction, and I guess this kind of synergy, it's a win-win for both ecosystem, for both for both people from our community and the Caduceus community.
yeah,
Yeah, so getting to next question. So of course this is more like a general one. So with it said like this. So with the rapid advancement of AI and the metaverse, how can we strike a balance between leveraging AI capabilities to augment human creativity and maintaining the essential human touch and individual expression within digital reality? So it's quite difficult question, I guess, but Maybe
Mm.
you can start giving your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an interesting one. And I guess I would start with saying that we definitely want AI to help augment experience and augment capabilities of humans, right? So in the metaverse, you want them to have better, better interactions, but you don't want to replace, the needing of humans. Um, so yeah, that's how I would start. And then in terms of making sure that they, yeah, I think I would go with that. I would go with that.
Yes. So in a way, I guess people kind of fear that the more connected, the more integrated we are with the technology, in a way we're losing something which is like fundamentally human, right? So in a
Mm,
way we lose something on the human side. So if you remember, like a lot of years ago, when there was like this Google Glass, if you remember, when people kind of try to create these mixed realities, right? So and I guess this is similar right now with the invention from Apple, like iVision, or how it's called. In a way, people fear that they when you becoming part of like an even like in utilizing an AI to augment your work and to do better things faster, or utilizing the metaverse to explore new way of creating things, or even having fun. I guess people are kind of afraid to lose something which is like the human touch. But in a way, this sounds to be true, but at the same time, it I guess is more about letting people to deepen and to enlarge their capabilities, right? So right now we use, for instance, our smartphone every day. It
mm,
almost becomes something like almost integrated. It's not yet wired to our brain, but we utilize it every day. When it's about traveling somewhere, you cannot travel without your phone, without having a map or getting address. Like, so I guess in the near future is going to be same with with both the metaverse, which it's going to be more or less indistinguishable from real world. We have like a new layer overlapping this the non-normal activities.
mm.
But in a way, people still fear that, but we'll get there. And when we're going to use that and get used with it, I guess it will feel just natural as you're using your smartphone today. So it will be no fundamental difference as you're using your smartphone to search something, or to to even come order your food or a taxi. um, Yeah, great. So regarding the next question, so in terms of AI generated content and the experience in the metaverse, what measure can be taken to maintain authenticity, prevent misinformation or deepfake related issue, and how a trustworthy and secure environment for user can be created. So this is more about how we make
Mm.
sure that we create we put people we put in hands of people amazing technology. It's like metaverse technology or AI technology. So I guess the idea of the question, how we ensure that these aren't used for crazy things like misinformation, deepfake, or what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think to some degree in the metaverse, or at least in game, or where we have a bit more creativity and a bit more freedom to make things up, to copy, because it's less important, you can get away with some of that. But nonetheless, it's still, you need to have authenticity, or at least proof that this is original content, or at least original in the sense that you and the AI created it, not that you copied it off someone else. This is where NFTs would, in theory, come in. because that is a stamp of authenticity. So it stops any direct copies. But how do you stop any slightly augmented copies? Let's say you have this in-game asset which you want to buy, but instead of buying it, you just go to your AI and create it. How do you know how is that fair? Where does the copyright live with the artist that created it? You that like slightly changed it. That's tough. That's tough. You could have some overseeing protocol which can detect similar objects in a game or in the metaverse or other assets, and kind of acts as a judiciary system that if that happens, blocks one and stops the other. You could have it automated. You could have it under a council, manually done. All very complicated stuff, and a lot of stuff we'll have to figure out when we get there. With regards to deep fakes, that's probably more media and more real life, right? How do we stop AI, or maybe how can blockchain play a role in stopping AI fake news on social media? Again, that's a tough debate. It's all about provenance. Proving the source of the news, or maybe holding people accountable for what they say and what they spread. So maybe flip it on the user, or the spreader, or the creator of the content, where if it is deemed to be fake and provably fake, then there's some repercussions. These are just my thoughts.
Yeah, great thoughts. So what I would add to that is more like, okay, so we have this amazing tool that, of course, can be used in creative and good or not so good ways. And I guess you're right. Maybe the blockchain can be used in a way to track down who's the person, who's the user that generated that content. So in a way, by creating new mechanisms that allow you to track down who's the person generate that, then people won't be incentivized to utilize the technology in a malicious way. So I guess the idea that you just pointed might be something very worthy to explore, because
Mm,
if you can, of course, if you can identify, and this is not a very hard problem, having like a decentralized identity, letting people to store their identity in a decentralized way, and at the same time to be trackable, and if something is bad, then you're able to see who that person was that create that thing that is not so useful, or is even malicious for other people. So
yeah.
you're right. It's a tough question, but I guess the people, or whoever managed to solve that, it's solving a real huge challenge
Mm.
that it is going to have a huge impact in all the things that we see currently.
Yeah, I would actually add to that and say you're right that identity plays a very important role, and ideally not ideally, but in one use case, everyone could have their real identities associated to what they say in real life, and that would stop a lot. Obviously there's people that want their privacy and be able to speak in real life with privacy, and to cater to that, it all comes down to reputation. So you might not need to link your real identity, but your anonymous identity can build a reputation. And if it's a reputation of someone that spreads fake news, then that's how you will be regarded as, and maybe branded as, um, from various different, fake news verifiers. Then obviously the problem just falls on the fake news verifiers. Who are these people? Whatever. But that's an initial step,
Hmm.
that you could tackle that problem.
Yeah, now that you mentioned, we actually have something very similar for people, pushing, publishing AI applications, so like a rating system where the
Mm,
communities act as a curator. So, but this is not good. I mean, this is, as you mentioned, the first step. But when it's about, finding copycats or counterfeit, then there's
Mm.
entire new universe that unravels, right? So let's
Yeah,
say it's like in a metaverse, and there are some people creating some very interesting, as we just discussed, about the possibility to let people to generate items in the game, right? So people can generate some interesting, unique items, and how you stop other people to, to create, like,
yeah,
copy of those things. Of course, you can use like NFTs, but it's very hard to ensure in a way like uniqueness. So yeah.
yeah. Because that's the thing. It's not just a technical problem. This is a legal problem. It's about the copyright law that lives in that jurisdiction. Now, if you're a global protocol, you might fall under many jurisdictions. So how do you handle that? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a very interesting thing for people to solve in the near future,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, so going to the next question. So it says like that. So as AI continue to evolve, what potential challenge or ethical consideration do you foresee in terms of its integration or impact on, digital realities within the metaverse? So it is more like, okay, so we know that AI is going to accelerate. I mean, we just at the bottom, like the near bottom of the curve. So we're going to see something exponentially happen. So what we can,
yeah.
how can we, um, or
What can we
what's your
see
opinion on
coming?
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I do see I definitely do see a lot of problems. For example, there might become it might become very obvious that AIs will just outcompete humans if they're playing the same game in multiple games. And maybe a general AI will beat humans in Minecraft, RuneScape, whatever. All these games that we have, it will just always win, and it might become a really uncompetitive landscape where the games are, especially games that are financially incentivized. All these play to earn games will get ruined by AIs that beat humans, which will make them not very fun to play. Another problem is that I do worry about, especially in games where assets are financial or like are redeemable in real life, which is where GameFi kind of tries to play itself. Um, I do worry about the movement of funds and the ease of like money laundering in some respects, right? Because you'll have the poor money laundering agencies will now have to track thousands of tiny little currencies and in-game currencies and anonymous players swapping. Like if you're interested in this, there's a whole uh, case study on RuneScape and how, because RuneScape Gold is actually tradable in real life, it's not a cryptocurrency, it's just a regular game asset. There's so many schemes for these bots to try and send money to each other so they can accumulate money and then sell it to players. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating view and this is not even with cryptocurrency. So imagine with cryptocurrency when it's all automatable, all standards, much easier to integrate and maybe optimize. It's a view of what can happen down the line. But yeah.
Yeah, very interesting insight. But I'm more thinking about, how we can this infinite world. Like you just mentioned about Minecraft, right? So you play a game where things are generated, like, dynamically as you play. Of course, this is a simple game, but imagine how we can create like new types of games, right? A new category of game where, the world and the entire game universe, it's customizable. it's
Right.
it's adapting to its user. So as it plays, it's adapting to his need, to his way of playing, and it's creating like a in a way like a custom game, because we saw a lot of big companies, big game creator trying to create this unique experience, because in a way people are playing game because of the experience and how they feel while they play that. So I guess, as I mentioned, we're just at the beginning of the bottom part of what AI can be used for. So imagine how we you can go tomorrow, put your 3D glasses and play a game that is like your own creation, your own world that you can control and utilize this AI to transform it. So I try to look at the good sides of how we can utilize the technology. Of course, as you mentioned, there are some use cases that people can utilize, that especially when it's about some financial gains that they want to manipulate in a way, so to
Mm.
have some extra the gains. But um, I'm confident that people will utilize this amazing technology to create value, because on the long run it's important the value that it provides to the world and other people, not only to some short term
Yeah,
gain.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I do think that user-generated content games will flourish thanks to AI. I do think
Yeah.
that will be very, very, very interesting.
Um, yeah. Now moving on the next question. So you know, uh, the metaverse, it's expected to bring together people from various backgrounds and cultures. So how can AI contribute to create inclusive and diverse digital realities while mitigating biases and ensuring equal opportunities for all participants?
Huh. These are two conflicting statements. um, it's tough to how does AI make sure that we all get along without having its own bias? It's I mean, first you have to define what all get along means. Like I guess, and that's where the law comes in. You kind of say, well, yeah, let's make sure that we all you know are respectful to each other, or don't say hateful things, or don't say or don't do illegal things, and then maybe make an AI enforce that. Is that kind of where you're going? What you're asking, or
Well, it's like an open question. We just can explore and
mm, yeah, um, yeah, it's maybe yeah, that's kind of in the land of AI moderation is how I would look at that. So like, how can AI help us all get along and not have bias? Um, I look, as a little idea. If anyone's out there wants to do this, I would get an AI to scrape or to inhale and read very basic legal documents about what is illegal and what isn't about human interaction. What the definitions of hateful speech, and then you write a little Twitter bot that whenever you see hateful speech, or a Discord bot, and whenever you see hateful speech, you reply and say, "This is hateful speech under Article 716," and there you have automatic moderation in some sense. If anyone wants to build that, do it on Caduceus. But anyway, that's the only thing you have to do. Um, yeah, that's one take of it. You could have AI enforce moderation, but then the question is, how do you stop bias? And that's all about how you train your model.
Yeah, I guess you touch a very important point when it's about training or learning an AI. It's very important what is the input, because the input it's just a software. It doesn't have
Mm,
like the capabilities to infer beyond the things that he's been trained with. So you're right. If the AI can be used like a sort of judge to make sure that people are behaving in a certain way, of course, in a way we're already doing that. So if you think about like a protocol, and this is happening in the blockchain right now. if you think about the protocol and you have these all these built-in, rules that say, okay, if you do that, you get rewarded. If you do that, you get punished. So we already got that, which is encoded at, at the program level in a way like code is law.
Hmm.
So we already doing that. But when, as you mentioned, you're right. When you're having something more powerful like an AI, who's also, it doesn't contain only like some simple rules. It has like something more profound, more like as you mentioned, like laws. You have some laws and say, okay, these are the laws, and make sure that everyone it's following that. Um, this can work, I guess, in a way, in a certain limit, when it's about dealing with simple things like, in a protocol, it works because the rules and the interaction are simple. But when you're in a game, you're playing a game, the number of interactions, the possibilities are more vast.
Hmm.
So it's harder to utilize an AI as a judge. You can use it for some simple in-game rules, but not like a very high level governmental,
Yeah,
govern
but
like your dynamic.
I would say actually I would disagree because I would say in a game there's still it might be abstract, but there's still substantially less rules than real life. I think the hardest thing to do is real life, but in a game it's simpler because it's just less rules and slightly less important. um, but just a question on that came to my mind for Open Fabric. You guys have, you provide loads of these AIs available, and you have them trained on data sets. And some, is it right that some data sets you provide, and some developers can choose their own data sets? How does it work?
Yeah, so essentially, we don't enforce no one to use a certain data set, or essentially, people can use data set, their own data set, train their own model. They
Mm,
can utilize data set from one of our, partners. We already got some partners providing, like initial partner providing training set and data set, or they have the freedom to choose. Even they can use like open source on free data set to train this model. And I guess in nowadays, even though there's a lot of people saying that, of course, it's really hard to get data, it's really hard to get very good data, but it's
mm,
not that hard to get initial data to form like a base model. There's a
right,
lot of open source training set and data set, petabytes of data already
right.
out there that you can use to train and do your basic model. But when it's about doing that fine tuning, like 99%,
Mm,
then this is really hard.
oh, I
And
see.
this is require a lot of very specialized, very fine tuned and filtered data.
Mm,
One of the main reasons why ChatGPT is so good, it's because it has a lot of data who has been tweaked by people, by real people,
mm,
hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people curating data and labeling in a way that it provides like it's like 99%. Because right now, for instance, we are running ourselves like large language module on top of Open Fabric. Of course, they are not so as good as ChatGPT, because we it lacks this like 99 part of the of closer to
right.
the 100%. So yeah, in our case, people can use their own data to train it, or can choose from open
Mm,
source free, or use the data from one of the people providing data
yeah.
in our ecosystem.
That's fascinating because, like you said, it's the initial data set is so important, and that is what Chat GPT's secret sauce is, at least for the moment. So, and you guys, you have a vision for like a data or initial database marketplace. Is that true? Do you have right?
Yes, so right now in our ecosystem, we have like four major players. Like we have developers, people knowing how to create these models. We have infrastructure provider, who essentially are people willing to render computational power, to run and train AI. And the third one is like the data provider, who's the guy who already possess like this not like data, because raw data is useless. It has to be curated, it has to be labeled, it has to be filtered, it has to be pre-prepared. That's real valuable data. Raw
mm,
data, you can find a lot of raw data, but it's not that useful. So going back, we have a special stakeholder who can provide or sell their own training set, data set easily, because we're putting together all these creators. And of course, the main role is to create relevant AI application that makes sense for the end user, like people do not possess like technical knowledge. You just get on Open Fabric, click on an app, create an instance, and just utilize that, just like that. Very simple. So they they only need like a browser and having MetaMask installed, and that's it. You can then utilize AI technology very easily with Open Fabric.
mm. Wow, nice.
Okay, so going to a more interesting question. So, and this is more about, we all see this about regulation. So, considering the recent delisting of certain tokens by major exchange to this regulatory action, um, what is an opinion? I mean, in a way, we saw this regulatory things happening in both space like AI and blockchain. So more and more governments start to enforce idea things. So how do you foresee that as a, what for the future of metaverse, blockchain, AI? So how do you perceive this kind of regulatory enforcement like for government and
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously I'm a fan of regulation because I think regulation obviously stops a lot of problems and a lot of bad actors, which we've always had in this space, especially in the blockchain space, has experienced quite a lot, probably more than average. Um, and how would it when it comes towards the metaverse and towards GameFi, NFT, and then AI inside of that, I think it will probably come too late. I think they already have all the problems that we try and prevent will have already happened many times, and at the cost of gamers and users and people, and so hopefully what we see is a push um, where it gives a regulatory sandbox or environment for companies to try things with the best intent and in good faith. But then when things go wrong, there is leniency. But companies that don't have this transparency or don't have this openness to collaborate with regulation, they should go through that process of at least some kind of formal. Ideally, it's not a burden on the company or not such a huge um, requirement that makes them uncompetitive, like we see that maybe the SEC is doing in the US or whatnot. Um, but there has to be something to just keep us all honest, right?
yeah, I guess you're perfectly right. There should be like a a balance, right, between protecting people and also guiding, because in a way it's sort of guiding the businesses how they should create things that make sense and don't affect like the end user, the customer, the community, the people. But at the same time, I feel like most, and maybe it's not general, but there are cases when government are pushing regulation without actually understanding the technology. So how can we make sure that people creating these rules are actually understanding how the technology are working? I mean, if it's about to think about, there was this time when the CEO of OpenAI got into the U.S. Senate and tried to push those people to create AI regulation, which is currently, happen as we saw, like, a few days ago in EU Parliament, adopting like an AI regulation. But I wonder if this like pushing regulation without understanding the technology is something good. I mean, of course, it creates like a framework which protect people, and this is good when it's happening. But when this is creating, pushing regulation without understanding technology, I wonder if companies or people utilize and building with those technology, aren't constrained, and at the same time we are in competition with other people that do not have this kind of regulation. So I'm thinking about what's happening, let's say, in China or other places.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like you said, a lot of education has to happen, and it's hard. Government staff normally quite underpaid, and you see a lot of talent leak. So it's very hard, for Web3 entrepreneur or developer to work for the government for half the salary, at least maybe in the UK, when he can get double as much for a company in the same location. But yeah, yet again, that has to be solved, and that I do like the approach that OpenAI has done with a lot of congressional hearings very soon. With that's been quite fascinating to watch and refreshing to watch. At least, yes, it's very disruptive, but at least they're there in front talking with Parliament or regulators earlier than I would have expected, which is nice.
don't you think it is more like maybe it's more don't you think it could be like a way to make sure that these big companies, they're holding their their advantage,
Monopolies
monopolies?
by I mean, yes, they could definitely do that. They can come in and say regulate all the small guys. But I do remember the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman say that he specified make sure you only regulate the big ones. Don't worry about the small companies. Let them give them more freedoms, but regulate the big players. Regulate Google, Facebook, and us, which I think is the great approach. Regulation should go after the massive, multi-billion profit-making organizations because that's where all the risk is, especially to the end consumer. And then, if small companies make mistakes, they make mistakes, but tackle the big fish where it's too big to fail, let's say.
Yeah, but do you think that like a regulation can be enforced just selectively? Because in a way, if it's law, it's for everyone, right? You cannot say, okay, this is law, but it's just for you or for you or for you. So it isn't like a big of
Mm.
trap out there.
Yeah, I think okay, law has to be for everyone, but enforcement is selective, right? Like, the way the SEC chooses their next targets is selective. They choose the ones they want to go after, or the biggest fish, or the ones that are important to them, or the ones they can enforce. And I think government should do the same. So yes, you might be breaking the law as a small company, but maybe no one goes after you until you're like, 10 years down the line when you are compliant, maybe. That's how I see
Yeah.
it, at least.
Great insight. So I guess the regulation is something open-ended topic, so we can discuss
Yeah,
for weeks about it.
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, looking at the time, I guess it's time to get to the next section where we take the question from the live question from the community. So the first one is, it says like that. So Open Fabric, have you guys developed your own AI tool similar to what OpenAI does, or are you dependent on third-party technology? I guess this is something which is for me. So I will answer that. So essentially, it's important to understand what we build. It's not only about building model. We're building a protocol that let any developers to deploy, run, and scale its own AI application very easily. So I guess the question is more about these use cases or demonstration that we showed. Basically, all these models are running on top of Open Fabric. So no, they are not like simple call to the third party. So it's not like simple call to ChatGPT. We can use that, of course, but for instance, we also be like large language model. We deploy large language model on top of Open Fabric. We see how it's working. We deploy different model, like as I mentioned, like 3D model generator, like even like stable diffusion, music generator, all kind of very interesting. Even a deepfake. We even explored how we can deploy like a deepfake and how well it executes. So the possibility are unlimited, because we let people to get their creation. It doesn't matter what framework they use to build it, like TensorFlow or PyTorch. You can get that integrated with our SDK, then you can deploy it on top of our protocol, and it will run just like that. So this is how it's working. Yeah. So going to next question, it say, how does it work in real life? How does the AI solution and service are integrated in Caduceus blockchain? Can you give tangible examples?
Yeah, I think the best example is to give the smart contract wizard that you guys
Yeah.
deployed, which is the premise is that you have a smart contract on chain, and the user queries the smart contract with a question, like tell me something about this website, or tell me something about biology, whatever. And let's say it's a it's not chat G, let's say it's a large language model running on Open Fabric. So smart contract would then actually no, that smart contract will store the question. There'll be an oracle on Open Fabric side which monitors that smart contract, sees the question come in, queries its own language model for the answer, and then does another smart contract call onto the Caduceus blockchain to store the result. And that stored result is displayed to the user. This is a very typical Oracle pattern. You see it in Chainlink. You see it in all Oracle solutions. It's a push solution. So there's off-chain code monitoring the smart contract and then pushing the result to it. The smart contract, as you know, in the EVM space, they're pretty dumb. They can't actually go to the outside world. They have to wait for the outside world to come to it and tell it what to do or store the solution. So that's that. There's a very good demo somewhere on YouTube,
Yeah.
which demos doing that on the Caduceus blockchain. So integrating with, is it correct that we can integrate with all of Open Fabric's AI protocols? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, all of those out of the box, so you can basically have any kind of any solution that comes out of Open Fabric. You can now have it stored on chain, which unlocks new business models, some which I don't know, most which I don't know, and that's up to the creativity of the developers to figure out. But that's the capability in practice, from a technical perspective.
Yeah, that's a very good and elaborate, answer. So in a nutshell, what we're building together, in a way we're empowering smart contract. So you can essentially call like an AI as it would be like a smart contract, and in a way it gives superpower to smart contract, which as Julia mentioned, they are pretty dumb by themselves. But if we can integrate like AI functionality, they get extremely powerful and amazing new thing can be built on top of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going further with the next question. So it's a hello. Could you please give an example of an AI solution in the metaverse? Thanks. So I could start on that. So
Great.
the most simple and most straightforward example is the 3D model generator. So maybe you show in our previous session or in our demonstration video, we created like a model which is generated 3D model from text. Say, okay, make me like an airplane, and automatically the AI would create a 3D model of an airplane. This is something that can be exported and utilized in any game, in any metaverse environment. So this is something that can be easily integrated and useful in. Of course, the generative AI open up amazing new opportunities and way to to augment and to add more content in the metaverse.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And to add to that, you can think of each generated piece of like this plane that you as an NFT, and inside the NFT, the Blender code is there. So that because that code is what the tech needs to generate the plane in the game. Once you have it on the NFT, then you can trade that code seamlessly with all of the NFT marketplaces that exist. So, you give that code a life outside of the game and outside of the player. So, a very simple metaverse game is a metaverse game where there's user generated content and it's tradable between players. And maybe the whole world that the player creates is also tradable. Any subset of the creation of the assets are tradable.
Yeah, very, very, very insightful. So, going to the next question, can it says like that? Can you please tell us some of the potential use cases for interoperability and layer two bridges technology? How secure is the bridge? Because people tend to lose their assets during bridges. So I guess this is something for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll answer this in two parts. One is the bridge between us and Open Fabric, how secure that is. Now, it's not an actual bridge like the bridges that we've seen in crypto, because assets aren't duplicated on Open Fabric's side. It's an Oracle system. So the question there is, how secure is the Oracle system? And that is back to you then, Andre, which is who runs your nodes or your Oracle nodes, and how reliable is this infrastructure, and how tolerant or is it to like going down and availability?
Yes, so in essence, we have two ways of running this, we call it integration wizard. Is one that, assuming like a app developer and you're willing to create this integration, you can deploy and, manage your own Oracle and your own infrastructure, or you can, utilize like, the Open Fabric to do that for you. We normally encourage people to, we provide them the flexibility to do as they see more fit and according to the use case, because there might be people who are willing to keep those oracles and things in-house and keep them in a safe place because they consider like that. At the same time, there are people who are creating things that, okay, they can rely on the the Open Fabric network. So we try to be more flexible and let people to choose the path that makes more sense for them, for their own use case, because there are like two, there are multiple way how you can build things. There are different things that you can build. So it's up to people
That's
to.
great. Yeah, that's fantastic, because I wasn't aware of the bring your own like off-chain code part of that. That's really good for especially like enterprise clients that don't want to rely on anyone
Yeah.
else. They can just run their own infrastructure, and then it's as reliable as Web 2 technologies, which they can manage themselves, and they have done for many years. So that's great.
So yeah, going to the next question. So it says there was supposed to be a platform that makes easier for developer, even newbies. Are there any previews? So I guess this is something maybe for us. So I guess we have a light session with some of our people, building on from, we call it the innovation team, people building AI use cases, and we showcase how people can bring and build their own AI application models and we got documentation, a lot of things already prepared. We already start providing access to people who join our waiting list. Um, if you're interested in getting access, I mean early access, we, as mentioned, we are like in dev, like in tested developer preview. So we get access to some really good people actually building interesting things. So if you're interested, you can get on our website and enjoy the list. And if you're a smart person, then you will get access. You will get on the top of the list. But of course, you can wait and get access after we make public everything. The public testnet. Yeah. So there's another question. You say, can you tell us if AI will be used in light cycle project? If yes, how would we integrate it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't work with the light cycle team. I'm not part of that team, so I'm not sure. I'm they're probably looking at it. They're probably intrigued about it. But as of yet, I don't think there's any obvious AI integration that I know of.
Okay, great. So moving to, I guess, is the last question. How ready is Caduceus ecosystem for new horizon in digital assets realization in a new manner in different zones? So,
Huh. That's an interesting question. Um, the Caduceus ecosystem is definitely new, right? We're looking to bring on more users, more developers all the time, and more partners like Open Fabric. And it's definitely it's a very competitive space between a lot of EVMs to choose, which is why it's a long game to bring on more tools, make sure developers are happy, and give them capabilities that they might not have elsewhere. Hence our collaboration with Open Fabric um, and other partners. But is it ready for, I guess, digital assets realization? I'm not sure what that exactly is, but I don't think any EVM chain is fully ready for the full global world to come and digitize everything on them. But we're getting there bit by bit.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this, I guess there's a one last question. I guess we miss it. So it says like it seems Open Fabric has too many areas you can target. How do you focus? Which area do you think is the low hanging fruits? So I guess to answer that is that we're not after easy things. We try to find counterintuitive use case to explore new things that we don't want to do just another whatever to. Of course, we have use case that showcase how our protocol works in terms of comparison. So we want to let people to understand what to do by comparing with things that they already understand and use. So we have this like stable diffusion, our language model. We even have like an avatar generator like 3D and all these very interesting and uh, things that people are used with. But we also exploring, for instance, like drug discovery. We're exploring to utilize AI to generate like new medicine. We even start exploring to utilize AI in biotechnology, like DNA uh, sequencing and to find different kind of problems in at the DNA level. So AI, it can be used in many places, more than just the usual one. We even start experimenting of creating something we call autonomous DAO, like a set of AIs that essentially can be used to govern like an entire decentralized organization. We experiment with like uh, with use cases. We try to predict like depegging of stablecoin or even we try to create like AI power trading boards. So there's a lot of as you mentioned, there's a lot of places where AI can fit, but our focus is mostly all about counterintuitive and place that not everybody goes. And I guess this is important because when we started our project, it was like in 2019. When you speak with anyone and say, okay, we want to put together blockchain AI, everyone's like, you're crazy. That cannot happen. That cannot work. Never. So we work this despite people seeing like this. There's a big difference. So between how AI works, how blockchain works. So we see the potential, we see the synergy that can be created by putting things that normally do not fit together. So this is like a way of doing things for us. Um, yeah, so I guess that will be the question from our community. Unfortunately, we do not have time for more of them. So before we close, Giulio, if you have like a closing thought about our community or something that people should remember from our event.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a pleasure talking to you, Andre. It was a lot of fun, and I felt like we explored some interesting topics. Happy to do this again. And for people out there listening, I hope you're intrigued to build on blockchain, and I hope you're intrigued to build with AI. Check us out. Check out Open Fabric. Check out Caduceus, and look at the integration wizard that you can use today. So yeah, really looking forward to see what you guys can build.
Yeah, definitely. So what I can add from my side is that AI is going to be more and more present in all the things we see around us. So it will basically become as smartphone. We're utilizing smartphone every day. It in a way it's a part of us, right? It's like an extension that let us to connect to this digital universe that called the internet. I guess we're going to see something similar with the metaverse, where the augmented reality will get as a new layer over the normal reality. So I guess these two technology working together can create some really amazing innovation that will shift and will change like the our society in, I hope, in a good way. I hope in a positive way. So I'm very very keen to see the next innovation in maybe a few, not years, maybe months. So yeah, it's been great. It's been great chatting with you, Julius. So thank you very much for having for being here in our discussion, in our event. So yeah, thank you very much.
Likewise. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.